say thank you for everyone who's already here with us. I am Rhonda Harris. I am the social and emotional learning specialist within my school district, which is the Charlotte-Mecklenburg School District in Charlotte, North Carolina. We are a large urban school district of probably over 170 schools. And social and emotional learning is a big deal for us in Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools. And in order for us to accomplish our equitable practices, we have to, or our goals towards equity in education, we have to acknowledge the significance of social emotional learning or social and emotional development. So when I go through my presentation today, you're going to see a lot of references to sources that I have acquired from being embedded in the work of CASEL, which is the Collaborative for Academic and Social and Emotional Learning. That is the foundational research that we base all of our practices in my school district upon. They are the gurus of social and emotional learning. So I just wanted you to be aware of that. I have a career as a professional school counselor for almost 20 years, with my most recent role as social and emotional learning specialist since 2016 in my particular school district. So with the tremendous work that we do with helping our young men grow into manhood and our young women grow into womanhood, I thought it would be important if we talked about what that means for us and our adult social emotional learning. So thank you, Larry, for inviting me to do so. All right. And the link for the presentation is in the chat if you want to follow along. So we would first start here. One of CASEL's signature practices is that we have an opening ritual. And I experienced that today in the sessions. So there's opening ritual, connection to content, or a brain break. And then the third thing is a closing ritual. So let's engage in an opening ritual. And what I would like for you to do, either shouting out or placing the word in the chat box, I want you to indicate what one word would you use to name an attribute of an adult mentor, something they must embody or possess to be an adult mentor. Patience, happy, committed, yes. Able to provide observation, compassion, compassionate, yes. Yes. And that's pretty much everyone. We have a small group today, right? Okay. Well, humility. Thank you for offering up those words. Because everything that you just mentioned are words of that are descriptors of someone who is engaging in social emotional skills, right? And so we are thinking that these attributes are important because you've probably had experience with them making a difference with a child that you're working with because you embodied them and you displayed it and you practiced it. But it's very likely that you also had some life-changing experiences or someone made an impact on you because they held some of these characteristics in addition to. And I love that David makes the point that there has to be this willingness to make mistakes and then repair, because that's a part of being restorative, right? And being restorative in our practices. And that big part to that David mentioned is being a risk taker. So if we lack empathy, if we're unable to observe, take a peek at people, look at them objectively, listen and practice being clear and not flapping, then we miss the opportunities to demonstrate social emotional learning practices or development and possibly make a difference in others' lives. And with us being charged in this work with boys to men and girls to women, it's so important for us, for our students to see us as present and available. So thank you for participating in that. Before I go a little bit further, I just want to mention a famous theorist, Abraham Maslow. Oh, I saw some faces light up just now. So Teresa and Parth, I'm assuming you are very familiar with Maslow. Okay. I got this picture off the internet and you see the credit at the very bottom. But basically, well, if you are familiar, not that I'm putting you on the spot, Teresa, would you like to chime in and give us a little insight into what Maslow is saying to us? What his theory is? There is a hint on the screen too, if you want to cheat.
You may have to unmute yourself, Teresa, before speaking.
Oh yes, Teresa, you are muted.
Oh yeah, I was trying to unmute. I was going around. I was like clicking and it wouldn't let me. And I can only see you. I can't really see anybody else. So what was your question again?
The question is, I saw your face and Parth's face light up when you saw Maslow come on the screen. I'm wondering if you want to take a risk and educate us about what you understand Maslow's theory to be.
Well, I was introduced to this over 30 years ago when I went into school to learn to be a teacher. So it's one of the, it's the bedrock of education. It's what teachers learn from the very beginning about how to see a kid. They're just the basic needs that kids have. And in order to meet this need needs to be met first. So you have to start basically where they are and just to build on those basic needs, to help them feel safe and secure and be ready and willing to learn.
Excellent. Excellent. Parth, are you adding to Teresa's response?
I was just going to share a technical cue. You can click on view and then select side by side gallery. You can see others.
Excellent. Yeah.
I was familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs in my early coaching, actually, with like landmark education and really thinking through like what are the different needs of an individual, and that if certain needs are bypassed, you like end up reverting back down, and then you've got to clean that up and work on that before you can move back up again in a way. So yes. The value of that cleaning up, back to what David was mentioning earlier.
Oh yes, I couldn't have said it any better than Teresa and Parth. And if there's anybody that wants to add to, please feel free to chime in. But basically what we are discovering or talking about now is that there are universal physiological needs, something that we all share as humans, things that we need to be taken care of, such as the ability to access air and breathe, to have food and water, to be able to use the restroom, and to be able to self-regulate, right? And if any of our foundational needs are interrupted or taken away, then it creates barriers to other things, such as accessing academics or becoming the best citizens that we can be when we're looking at our young men and our young women in our programs, right? And so many of them that we are engaging with, their physiological needs might have been interrupted from the start. And that's how we talk about trauma. Right? We talk about the significance of trauma in our children's lives and how we automatically see when we're engaging with them how they may not feel safe. So we spend a lot of time building trust, right? When we first engage with them, spend a lot of time building trust. We have to show up consistently because they need to know that we want to be there with them so that they are loved and that they belong with us in our world. And so we hope that in doing that it's going to impact their self-esteem and that they can hopefully eventually become the best persons that they can be, that they can operate as they are intended to in society, right? And what we fail to recognize is that in society, we think that students who are in the worst circumstances are the ones who need the most help. But I like to argue that social emotional development helps us with all kinds of students because the physiological needs of children in higher economic brackets are also interrupted too. They also have parents who may misuse substances, parents who are also engaging in domestic violence relationships. So it's not that it's just our students who may live in a lot in trailers that are in need of us showing up a certain way. All of our children are in need and all of our children can benefit. So one thing that social emotional development does is it helps us to hopefully mitigate some of the barriers that keep our children from being the best children that they can be. But it also allows us to see who we are as the adults that we're trying to be in our self-actualization when we practice social and emotional skills and development on the regular. So it's not something that's just relevant to them. So I'm having a hard time with my mouse. So with that said, I'm talking about social emotional learning, and we haven't even talked about the definition yet. And this definition comes straight from the website, castle.org, which is provided by the Collaboration for Academic and Social Emotional Learning. And what I would like for us to do is just take about 2 minutes and scan this definition and hold some words or key phrases that stick out for you. Have a couple of phrases, words that stick out? So let me hear them. Talk back to me. What sticks out for you?
Develop healthy identities.
Develop healthy identities, yes. Which is something our adolescents are all striving to right now, right? Figuring out who they are.
Yeah, yes. Learning to manage their emotions is a big one, because many of them have never been taught, or their examples for them are maybe the opposite. The adults in their lives, the adults don't even know how to do that. So how are they going to learn?
Yes, and to that point, some of our students or our children, our youth that we work with, have had to be the adults for a long time. And so when their only example of adulthood is lacking the skill to manage emotions, then they're doing what they know, as you were pointing out, but they're also doing what they have the most experience acting as. Even though they might have started at age 2 being the adult. Anything else sticks out for anyone?
Empathy. I think empathy is a big one that is important for being able to step into someone's shoes and understand that, everybody has pain, everybody suffers, and being able to acknowledge that.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So taking another's perspective is key and critical. I find in my personal experience, when I'm able to step back and take another's perspective, I'm not coming from a place of thinking that, they're out to get me. I'm in this by myself. Oh my goodness, it's a trap, right? Some of that paranoid kind of stuff leaves my space whenever I'm like, well, wait a minute, it's possible that she or he is coming from this place. And I like that part that's pointing out that in the absence of models, that there's certain things that we hope that they can do that will help enhance their experience as people in this world. So the other things that I want to point out from this definition is Castle makes sure to let us know that this is integral. This is necessary. It's not something that we can really do without, right? The other thing that stands out for me is that it's a process. So it's not like you're ever going to get to, we say this in the education world all the time, and you probably do too, proficiency. I am not going to master this ever. I'm going to always be a work in progress. So if I could buy all of you construction jackets and vests, I would, and hand them out, because people need to understand that we are working on this all of the time. But whenever we have the space to practice and apply this knowledge and these skills and these attitudes, then we engage with each other better and human relationships improve. And we tend to be working alongside the type of coworker that we're proud to be on the team with, right? We tend to engage with the Walmart counselor a little bit better because they're practicing and acknowledging these skills and attitudes. We're kind of getting more of what we want. But then we're also seeing that our students are growing into the type of people we want them to be as contributing members to our society. So it's really important that we set up the spaces for this to take place. And I liked what I heard earlier about clear and flat, clear and frap, because that is something that's going to be practical for us to begin to establish or have those spaces for these skills to take place. So when we think about boys to men and we think about girls to womanhood, girls to women, I wanted to point out that Castle's framework says that there's a place for you. And when I think about your organization in particular, you are what's necessary for those 5 skill areas to grow and thrive. And so the 5 skill areas are self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision making. And it takes a village. So not only can this be the lift of boys to men and girls to women, we have to have schools who are intentionally making sure that our students have positive classroom and school climate experiences. So I was talking with, and I hope I'm not outing anyone, I was talking with Adam a little bit earlier in a session today. And he talked about supporting students who have been involved with the judicial system. And in my experience in education, students who have been involved in the judicial system are sometimes the least desired student, right? And when they walk into our school building, they get treated a certain way around their history. And what better chance do you have as a young person to recover and make a difference? It's not like they are 80 years old and have had a 70-year life of crime. We're talking about some young people who have made some mistakes and deserve another chance. And when our schools don't have that positive climate, and that student is, or that child is only getting support from the mentor from boys to men, then we're causing an imbalance in their lives, right? So it's important that we're taking care of our students from a village perspective. And I see boys to men and girls to women as a key part of the community and the caregivers that provide that authentic partnership and those authentic relationships that are aligned with opportunities for students to see a different side of themselves and to become better at establishing and maintaining positive relationships with everyone. Any questions or comments so far? So, because please chime in. I like to talk back and forth. I don't ever want to be the one that's only speaking. So if something comes up, yell it out. This goes a little bit further in just explaining and defining the definitions. And the things that I want to point out when it comes to the definitions is, of course, there has to be this high level of self-awareness because we want our young people to become advocates for themselves. And we want them to be able to take the skills that they acquire and apply them across different contexts. So the way that I engage as a mentee of parts, I hope that as a mentee, I can also go and engage with my teacher, engage with my employer on my first job, because I've built these skills and I can apply them in different parts of my life and not just break down and resort to my old ways of handling things because it's outside of the context of the relationship part that I have as a mentor to mentee. When you look at the definitions, is there anything else that stands out for you?
Yeah, for me, the self-management one really jumped out. I think when I think about teenagers or younger kids, the idea of managing your own emotions is often very new to kids, which I found surprising at first. Mm-hmm. But, oh wait, these things just happen, don't they? What do you mean? Manage them.
Yes. So that's interesting because the neuroscience around this says that their brains are not possibly completely, frontal lobe of the brain is not possibly all the way developed until closer. They used to say 24, 25. Now, recently, I've heard as close to 30, right? So that's one thing. The other thing is when it comes to emotions and managing emotions, some of our children have limited vocabulary, and that's what we refer to as emotional literacy. And so when you're checking in with them, they tend to say the same things over and over. I am mad, I am sad, I am frustrated, I'm angry, and are very limited in being able to say when they feel exuberant about making a C finally on a class that's been hard to pass. They have that limited emotional vocabulary, which also contributes to limiting the ways that they manage their emotions, because they're seeing themselves really one-dimensionally, right? Parth, did you want to chime in? It looked like you were about to say something.
I was just thinking, it's almost as if they're coloring with the 8-color crayon box versus a 256 crayon box.
Yes.
There's just these nuances are missing, and yet it's not their fault.
Right.
So it's so easy to project cerulean when all that kid knows is blue.
Right. Exactly. So as the adults, it's important for us to broaden that and expand that. And how are we able to do that if our social emotional skills are limited too? So we have to work on showing up a certain way. So with that said, Parth, I am going to switch to this quote that I found from Steven Spielberg. I thought about you guys. I've used this in presentations before, but I thought about you for this particular session. How does it speak to you, what Steven is saying? I'm calling him by first name because, he and I go way back. How does it speak to you?
Well, it's kind of like the last session about, not frapping, right? So that kind of just jumps out as, we're not bringing our own. We're check ourselves at the door and give the kid a chance to bloom.
Yes.
That thought too, to me, there's huge freedom in this. If I can give up controlling everybody and it's just about them finding out who they are, how much easier is life for me if I don't have to so that's what is today hitting me.
Yes. I love that acknowledgement of the freedom it is to be yourself and coexist with the person that you are influencing, right? Not having to shape them into who I think they should be or shaping them into who I am, but that we are coexisting and we're partnering in this, right? Because we talked about identities a little bit earlier when we were looking at the definition and how important it is for our adolescents to form their identities. And if they're struggling with figuring out who they are and feel that pressure that they're needing to become another version of you, because they already see you as heroes, right? I can't live up to that hero. Then sometimes we see a lack of engagement, and then pulling back, pulling away, not showing up. But we're going to set that space where we can speak to them about it. Anything else shows up? I like that you talked about that freedom in this. Anything else?
Just a quick question. So this brings to me this distinction between like attachment and intention, right? Like this creating them in my own images, like this attachment to a certain way. And I don't know if there's the right time to ask a question, but how do you catch yourself? Like, are there any strategies that in the moment to be able to mark or notice, I'm in attachment space right now. I'm not in, how do I transition to intention space?
That is a great question. And that goes along with that self-awareness, right? And I think part of the way to catch that is to be intentional about learning who it is that you are sitting with. And so the clear that we went through earlier, where we're listening, we're learning. And I think the beauty in that is we are gaining an understanding of what a person is saying to us about who they are. And you hear those gems in that, their goals, their aspirations, the things they struggle with, the things that they're proud of. And then you, in your work and your self-awareness, wait a minute, in what I just said or did, was that negating what I've learned about this person? Did I stifle this person? So it takes the work of your self-awareness and the work of you actually listening and attending to the person that you're with. Who else wants to add to that and offer up some suggestions on that struggle with attachment versus say it again, Parth. The other A slipped my mind just that quick.
Or just intention.
Attention. No other offerings? All right. Thank you. Thanks for that. Great conversation. It's never too late or too early to ask a question. So now that we've talked about what SEL is and how it relates to the work that we're doing, I want to start talking about us and work around adult social and emotional learning. And so there have to be some things in place for us to strengthen our social and emotional skills and engage in our own social and emotional development. And when it comes to boys to men and girls to women, we have to establish spaces where social emotional learning is cultivated, that is a part of the culture. So what does that mean? There has to be the freedom for you to connect. And I already heard that there are circles taking place, and that Larry admitted that he struggles that we are not able to see each other eye to eye. And that is the first step, that we are circling. We're able to make that human connection so that we are building relationships and we're cultivating a space that's safe and protected for us to share. So that's one thing. And with that, you're also engaging in some SEL practices, because when you're practicing clear and FRAP, that's also social awareness, gaining another's perspective and understanding how that fits in your self-awareness and in your world, right? And then it's allowing you to practice some empathy, right? And some self-management as you're building those relationship skills. The third component, and all of this is printed on Castle's website, is that we have to have the opportunities to model SEL. So when you're modeling SEL, what we're doing with one another as staff members in boys to men and girls to women, what we should also be doing with our students, right? Coming to a place where they see us as in the community with them and engaged with them, showing empathy and allowing them to also engage in feedback and give feedback. And then collaborating on the strategies that support and promote SEL. So that means your leaders are in a position where they're not doing things to you, but they're doing things with you. So as a collective group, you decide what strategies and practices are going to be helpful to help our students be more capable at expressing empathy. How are we going to build this into some of the activities that we're doing? How are we going to make it where they are establishing and maintaining positive relationships, even if it's a peer that we already know that they cannot get along with and their personalities are clashing? How are we going to be intentional about making sure that they're in a supervised group and we can point out opportunities where they're expressing or exercising a particular skill that's building upon positive relationships? So those are the 4 things that are necessary for us to strengthen our SEL practices. We must be engaged. We must have leadership that models. We must have leadership that provides the space. And then we must take it out and spread it and use it with those that we are impacting the most. And you're wanting to say, why? Why? Well, this is a quote about, or stats about teachers, but it applies to us too as mentors. Whenever we are engaging in our social and emotional development, we are less likely to get tired in our roles and experience burnout. And in our mentorship roles, we are dealing with students who have circumstances that are beyond our comprehension. circumstances that we may never come across in our entire lifetime, that they've been dealt with over and over and over again. And it's hard to not get burned out when you see that, because it tugs at your heart and it stays on your mind. And if you're like me, you wake up in the middle of the night thinking about them sometimes. So if we are engaging in our social emotional development, then we're less likely to want to quit, give up. But we're also likely to be able to model the things that we wish to see from them. And we're also more likely to experience success in the areas that we want to, such as our students successfully completing our Boys and Men program and our Girls to Women program. And then them coming back and becoming mentors for the ones that we're bringing along behind them. How do we do it? These are just some suggestions. And I wanted to categorize it in a way where we think about it as individuals. What can we do? What can I do as an individual to enhance my social emotional development? Some of the things I've listed here, you probably already engage in, right? Hopefully you're engaging in some mindfulness. Those of you who don't like to write, journaling, you can type. You could type your journal online in your computer. Hopefully we're exercising in this COVID world, and that we're not afraid to seek some counseling or therapy when it becomes too intense, or just regularly for our checkups, just like we do with any other part of maintaining our health. The other way that we leave out, and I thought that this was important, when we're talking about social awareness and other relationships, it's important that we explore and engage with other cultures or persons who are not like us. And that is key. What could I have left out? What is a strategy that you use to enhance social emotional development that I didn't list under individual strategies?
I do yoga. I don't know if it really fits under exercise or if it fits under mindfulness, but it's kind of a mix of the two. It's that stretching, and I think that is we've had some libraries that have done that as part of their makerspace, have added that into some of the things for the students. And so I know that that's something that can be used.
Yes. Thank you. Anything else? How do you treat yourself? Do you treat yourself in healthy ways? Will you make sure that you watch a humorous movie, that you get on Zoom with friends or people that can make you laugh? Do you do any of those things as an individual for your SEL strategy? Ways to enhance your SEL strategies in a collective way include engaging in those 3 signature practices. I talked about the opening ritual, and that you're forming spaces as a team where you're sharing. You're making sure you share at the beginning of the day, that is your community building practice, and that you have those mind breaks that brings connection back to content. And then that you also have some type of closing ritual. And our children need that too in our mentorships. They need to know that we're going to open up and we're going to build community, and we're going to continue to fortify the trust and safety amongst each other, that whatever they're engaging in has a purpose. We bring it back for them to know what it is that they're doing. Hey, we're focusing on empathy. This was our exercise. This is how it fits. And then having that closing ritual where we're checking out with them today and learning about what they expect to accomplish in the future or what they gained from the experience.
Could you say a little bit more about the mind break?
Mm-hmm. All right. So the brain break involves several components. One is movement, so that the brain stays energized with oxygen and blood, and that you also provide opportunities for it to be a fun way to connect to what their experience is. So I'm going to make a scenario up, and I'm not sure if this is happening or not. But let's say that you employ the use of equestrian services for mentorship. And you might spend The opening ritual might be asking the question about, have you ever seen a horse before? What do you think a horse is like? That's the opening question, right? Then they learn that some of them may have never been around a horse before. You talk about horses and what they are. During the day, during their mind break, they may get up and stretch. You might ask them to walk to another person across the room and talk about what they learned around horses that day. And y'all might even go out to a barn and spend time caring for a horse. So they're moving and they're making a connection between what they learned, and they're doing the first step of making a relationship with the horse. And then the closing ritual that day could be in a circle again, them sharing out something that they take away from it, and that they hope they can contribute to what the next experience will be around incorporating equestrian therapy into mentorship. That was really far-fetched, but I hope it was a decent example.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. All right. So circles and community building is the other collective measure that incorporates those 3 signature practices. It should be happening on the regular. What else do you think is a strategy for building SEL skills that could be collective, shared by many in one space? I hear thinking going on. All right. Now, as a counselor, I can wait, but with the sake of time, I'm going to move forward. And I'm assuming that what we're talking about, y'all think is sufficient, and that there aren't any that you can think of right now. But I hope you will share with me later by email or something if you come up with any. Now, before we go,
I was just going to suggest one that we did at our school is a collective exercise. So we have one of those giant parachutes. Have you ever seen those? And, they have all these different colored sections. They meet in the middle. And, you can just do fun things where everyone, swoops it up and it goes in. And then you can call out to the person across from you and they get to come in, or you can do things like playing with balls in the center. But that's a great activity where you're both being physical. It involves the community, getting to know each other's names, each other's styles. And I found that's a great example of how you can do that SEL on a collective basis. And it's quick and fun.
Yes. And the adults can do that too.
Yeah. And absolutely, all the teachers took place at a part of it as well. And getting to see that fun and silly side of their teachers helps break down those barriers to seeing adults not just as teachers all the time, but they can be playful. They also make mistakes. They're not perfect at everything.
Yes, that human connection. Yes, Parth, you were going to add.
I didn't have a specific activity or thoughts in this domain, but I just had a bit of an aha. I'm now seeing that the value of self-care in the development of social and emotional literacy or learning. As you're mentioning about mindfulness and the other diagram, taking care of one's needs, because unless you're calm, can you be that space for others? And I think I just began to understand what the definition of self-care was last year.
Wow, yes.
I tend to be someone who just keeps going, and especially I think, in the context of Boys to Men, Future of Masculinity, I think as a male too, it's like I put a lot of pressure to perform. And so therefore, like the word taking a bath to just relax was not even in my vernacular.
Right.
In terms of self-care practices. So for a while I was like, I need to be calm in order to be a good mentor. It was all like such doing. And now I'm actually seeing this like, well, self-care is like so critical to be the space that's fertile to create, like to activate social emotional. So
yes. It's all interconnected. And I think that Castle was intentional by placing it in a circle on a wheel rather than a straight line, right? Or a web. It's in a circle on a wheel because when you are engaging in self-care, you are the most self-aware because you know exactly what you need. You know, Parth, I need to relax in a bath today. It was a really tough day. So when you're self-aware, you also know how you're showing up to others, right? One of the reasons why you might have decided to relax was because you realize I'm extremely tense. I just yelled at the Walmart customer service person. So self-aware, social aware, relationship skills. If I'm self-aware, then I know how this is impacting my relationships with others. And so how am I going to self-manage? And what responsible decisions am I going to make as a result of? So it's all interconnected, as you said, with self-care and self-awareness being really, really core. I agree. I completely agree. Thank you for pointing that out. Yes. Awesome. All right. So with that said, I want you to spend a little bit of time together. Which time do I have? Okay. Spend a little time together. Parth, can we go into a breakout room for 5 minutes with this question? And they partner and share. So what I would like, if we get into a breakout room, is you would share with your partner which social emotional area will you engage in and try to enhance.
Hey, Rhonda,
Yes.
can you help me with identify a strategy to support your goal? What goal?
Okay, so which SEL domain will you enhance? And I should have said, how will you enhance that and not to support your goal? So let me write that over. So now that we're back, I'm curious to know, what did you gather from talking about this with each other?
I was just struck by the honesty that I shared, and just the depth of honesty that the other two guys shared. That it's kind of amazing, really, in just a few minutes, that we just like, okay, here's where I'm at, and yeah, it was pretty refreshing that way.
You'll experience some commonalities, which is validating oftentimes. To realize that we're not the only ones doing this work on ourselves, right? We might struggle
and being vulnerable, you know.
Yes.
It's like men don't do that usually.
Yeah. You know, I was talking earlier about toxic masculinity, which I'm sure you talk about a lot in Boys to Men mentorship. And the opposite of toxic masculinity is for us to understand the value in males showing empathy, emotion, vulnerability, that there's a balance of softness to the sternness, right? Of what we think about as traditional male roles and behaviors. So I appreciate, Bruce, you bringing that back to the group and keeping us in mind on that as we do this work. Anyone else want to share from their group? It might have been just two groups, Parth. Okay.
Right. There's just a group.
All right. So moving on, and we're coming to the end of our session. I'm hoping that you're walking away having a general overview of what social emotional learning is, how it fits into our lives as adults, as we do this work, and we are influencing the lives of youth, and some of the things that we can do to be better at it, and recognizing that we can't do it alone, and that we need partnership in getting this work done. We have to have that sense of community. And with that said, I'm curious if you have any questions of me.
I have one that will probably take offline because I bet it's longer than one sentence. But how do you work with an adult in a school environment who says SEL, that's a bunch of hooey? I got too much. I'm teaching. I'm busy. I don't have time for that.
Oh, I get that, Larry, all the time. So,
We can do that offline if you want, but that's a question I've got.
well, I can share. I have found that a combination of data and experience. So, bringing the data around what SEL does. Well, first of all, finding out what their goals are. And most teachers want to experience academic success with their students. So bringing that data in and showing how it contributes to the academic success. And we're talking about research that's existed as far back from a meta-analysis that took place in 2011 with Durlak and others. And that they recently did it again, did a meta-analysis in 2018. So there's data that supports that. And then providing that experience that allows them to hear from others about how it's made a difference. Colleagues that are similar to them that have gained ground because they've been committed to social emotional development. And then just asking them to try something simple and seeing what successes that they've accomplished as a result of it, and then to keep trying, because if they maintain being naysayers, offer up something else until they find something that works.
Great, thanks.
You're welcome. Any other questions? With that said, I think we are at time. I appreciate everyone's time and attention. I appreciate you so much.
Great.